Hey everyone, this is Chris here, and welcome to the final episode of Chill Tennis Entertainment. We've finally gotten here. In this video, we're going to be discussing the rather bleak-looking future of the ATP and men's professional tennis, and the reason why I believe that in the next 10 years, we may be looking at a complete collapse of the professional circuit. Now, before we get into all that, I'd like to encourage you guys, if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, to please hit the subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. The collapse of men's tennis. This is a video I never thought that I would have to make. And it feels kind of surreal to actually be here making a video talking about this when just 10 years ago we had one of the most exciting rivalries that the sport has probably ever seen with the big three. And it was actually the big three that really have generated the problems that we have today, the hype behind the big three, rather. So we're going to go back with this story all the way to the year 2003, back when Roger Federer was first winning his maiden Grand Slam title at Wimbledon. And this is a really exciting time to be a tennis fan. It's a little bit before I personally got into the game, but I was kind of aware of tennis a little bit back then, with Andy Roddick winning the US Open afterwards, and Federer going on a huge tear in 2004, winning 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams. I started watching tennis personally at Wimbledon in 2005, so that's where I picked up with the Federer Nadal rivalry, the very beginning of it. And it was a thrilling time to be a tennis fan, because you got to watch these two amazing athletes who played a very different and exciting style of tennis, and something that was completely different. That's an important word we want to remember here: different from anything that the game had seen before. And it naturally pulled you in when you would watch these two men compete, Federer and Nadal. And there was a lot of other great players in the game at the time. Andre Agassi was still playing. In fact, he made the finals of the US Open that year. Andy Roddick was certainly happening. It was exciting time to be a fan. A lot of other players as well. And even though people tend to think of this era as being the quote-unquote the weak era, and by the way, I should point this out, the reason that the name that name is stuck around for so long is because it's actually a throwback to when Andre Agassi reached the finals of the US Open in 2005. He was 35 years old at the time, and people said, what is a 35-year-old doing in the finals of a slam? This must be a weak era. That's actually where that term came from. I remember that. So that label kind of stuck around for a while, because Roger Federer was basically able to roll through the slams for the most part, facing a different type of player in every final. Initially it was, Safin, and then Hewitt, and then Roddick, and Baghdadis, and a whole bunch of different players. Gonzalez in the 2007 Australian Open. Maybe not the cream of the crop, let's say. Decent players, but guys who were maybe only going to be in a handful of Grand Slam finals, and some of them not even that. But you could tell that there was talent that was starting to push their way up, particularly with Nadal, who was starting to challenge Federer at Wimbledon during that time. And It was obvious that at some point he was going to be a threat to win hard court slams. Then you get into that 2007, early 2008 time with Djokovic really coming on board, busting through. I think I first heard about him in 2006 when he was playing at Wimbledon. And then the next year he starts winning Masters 1000s. He beats Federer and Nadal, and I think it might have been Toronto. And he was really doing great in that summer-fall hard court stretch. He makes the finals of the U.S. Open, pushes Federer, even though he loses in straight sets in the finals, but still really pushes him. He's up a break in the first and the second set, and maybe could have even won that match, potentially. And then just a few months later, he wins the Australian Open, defeating prime Federer in straight sets in the semifinals. So it was an exciting time to be a tennis fan, I'm not going to lie. And you could see with Andy Murray and with some of these other younger guys at that time, Wawrinka, I don't think anybody thought he was going to be as big as he eventually became. But there were other players who looked like they were maybe going to have bigger careers, like Fernando Verdasco and even Fernando Gonzalez, Robin Soderling, and certainly Juan Martín del Potro, who defeated prime Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer at the U.S. Open when he was only 20 years old. Then we kind of went through a slew of years where it was just the same guys winning everything. And it was obvious that the next gen, or they were called the Lost Gen at the time, I get that name eventually stuck with them, the Lost Gen, just wasn't up to the task. Players like Goffin, Dimitrov, Raonic, these guys were just Nishikori. They weren't going to get it done, and it was going to take another group to have to do their job of pushing the big three out. And that group also just couldn't get the job done. So by the time we get to 2020, 2021, we've got basically 10 to 12 years of players trying to take on the big three and failing miserably at it. And unfortunately, it's left this big gap in the game today when we know that all of these veteran players, guys now who are in their late 20s or early 30s, like Nick Kyrgios, Alexander Zverev, Stefanos Tsitsipas, and those type of players, we know that those guys never really amounted to much of anything, and there's just no real reason to watch those players and get behind them because they weren't that great to begin with. And then when it comes to Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, the young guys, the problem that we have there is that they're beating a bunch of these older next-gen, lost-gen guys that really never went anywhere, aren't real exciting to watch, basically are just kind of has-beens at this point. And there's just really no reason to bother with that. And then periodically, of course, they beat a 38-year-old Novak Djokovic. I mean, is that any surprise? The guy's how many years now past his prime? 10 years past his prime. And you can say what you want to about Sinner beating a 38-year-old Djokovic, but my question is, why is Djokovic even on the tour at the age of 38? And Novak is beating Alcaraz. He beat Alcaraz last year in straight sets at the Olympics, and then he beat him as recently as this year at the Australian Open. And you can't defend that for a guy that's supposedly going to be the greatest player of all time, maybe in 10 years. Why is he losing to a 38-year-old Djokovic who's way, way, way out of his prime? And it's just a joke. So in the next part of our video, we're going to be wrapping this up by talking about why the ATP is spreading lies about Sinner and Alcaraz and why they are desperately trying to convince us that these guys are going to be the replacement to the big three and they're going to surpass the big three, and maybe they already have, and they're going to be better than anything that we've ever seen before. All the nonsensical propaganda that you could possibly ever want is being pumped at us at the speed of sound right now. We're going to be discussing all of that and why they're trying to do that to us, lie to us, in the next video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one and got something out of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.